Hi guys, happy Friday. We hope you're having a good day, and I'm really excited to bring you another Ask the Expert session today. I just want to bring up that if you have missed any of them so far, they are available to rewatch on our Facebook and YouTube page. But what you can also do is go into our website on the event page, and the links will be from there. So this afternoon, I've been really excited to do this session for a few weeks now. I'd like to bring in Nicole. Now, Nicole is a nurse and she's a key worker working throughout this pandemic. So, first of all, I want to say thank you to all the key workers and people like Nicole who have got us through this last year. Without you, we wouldn't be in the position we are now and getting out to the other end. So, I'm going to bring Nicole and she's going to talk about her job role. Hi, Nicole, you okay?
Hi, yes, thank you. You?
Thank you. I hope you just heard what I said, but thank you so much. Without you and your team and everyone who works in the NHS, we would not be getting out the other end. So without further ado, I'm just going to jump straight into what made you decide you wanted to become a nurse?
When I was really, really young, I was about 5, I told my mum I was going to be a nurse. I don't know what drove me to that decision. And obviously, when I was little, I didn't really understand what that meant. But then when my little brother became ill when he was 6 with cancer, and we spent a lot of time at the hospital with him, and then that was an eye-opener. I kind of realised the role that a nurse really played then, and that kind of sealed the deal. I knew that's what I was going to do. Just took me a little while to get round to it.
It's amazing as well how many people say I'm going to be a fireman when I grow up, or a police officer, or a nurse when they are so young, and parents take it quite literally, don't they? Like, oh yes, sure, change your mind. But you are right. My brother was in the same position as you. We watched our dad who was poorly, and that completely changed our perspective on the NHS and what it's like to be a healthcare worker. So that's amazing that from a little girl you've been influence to go into that job role. Obviously we want to know about qualifications and stuff. So what qualifications did you have to become a nurse?
I started off, I did start an access course at Leicester College, which I really enjoyed, but at the time I did that, I was a single mum with a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old, and I was working part-time as well. So although I was enjoying the course, I just didn't have the extra time to commit to it. And because I was working as a HCA at the time, I decided to do NVQ3 through work, because work released the time for me to do that. And then from there, with the experience from work and the NVQ3, I then applied to go to university. And at the time I applied, there was an option to do either diploma or degree, and I opted for diploma. And that's not an option now, it is degree route only. But I think I regret not doing the degree at the time. I felt I wasn't academically clever enough to do it. But when you get to uni and you realise actually you don't need to be that academic, you've just got to put the work in, really. So I came out with a diploma, and I'm in the middle of sort of topping up to degree at the moment.
That's fantastic. So it's amazing that how many people do feel that way, that they're not academic, especially when you've been in the workplace quite a while. And we may have some people watching who may be nervous about taking that next step. So how did you find going back into education to become a nurse?
Yeah, I mean, it was challenging with 2 little ones. They were a bit older by the time I went to uni, but actually there's a lot of support. So nursing, there is a lot of younger and mature students, so people that have done things before. We had people that were hairdressers before, and all kinds of different roles coming into nursing, of all ages and all backgrounds. There was a lot of support, because they know at uni that actually some people haven't been at school for 20 years and were going back into it. So there was extra support to access, and there was a lot of teaching about actually how to do the work. So you weren't just thrown in the deep end and here's an assignment or an exam and get on with it. You were supported all the way, through tutors, your peers, but also they ran separate kind of little classes at the library for how to search for articles, how to reference information, how to write assignments, how to study for your exams. There was nothing where if you felt like you were struggling, you were never on your own.
That's really good to hear, and especially when
Yeah,
you've got some peers to work alongside of.
yeah,
I don't think I could manage to write an essay without panicking even now, or with some guys. So it's great to hear the support network was around you, not only in just your teachers, but also your peers as well. So I'm really interested to find out, because obviously people work in different aspects of nursing, but what areas of nursing have you covered over your time as a nurse?
yeah. So I started off in the health service working as a healthcare assistant for or with the community nurse team. So that was a role where we would go out to people's homes and really do any care that they needed if they couldn't get to the GPs or a clinic or a hospital. And that was very wide ranging. So from things like medication administration, there was a lot of wound care, so things like leg ulcer care, or if somebody had had an operation, they needed stitches taken out or dressings, through to just basic observations, so blood pressure and pulse and checking on people. And quite a big chunk of the care that we did in the community was for palliative care. So looking after patients that were dying at home, and that was anything from going and just making sure that they had some mouth care, that they were comfortable, and a lot of that work involved making sure they had the medications in syringe drivers that deliver medication 24 hours, but that needs refreshing every 24 hours. So going and making sure they had the medication to keep them pain-free and comfortable. And although that's can be quite emotional and difficult, it was also really nice because that person had chosen, they wanted to be at home when they passed away. And by keeping them comfortable and calm and looking after them and the families, you were enabling them to do that. And that was a really nice part of that job.
As well, it's more than just caring for that person. I've had personal experience of, having nurses look after the family as well, making them cups of teas and making sure they're okay. Make sure you look after your own health, because we're looking after the patients as well. Is there any area of nursing that you would still like to have the opportunity to go into, or you've always wondered, is that something else I could do?
Yeah, I mean, I'm practice nursing at the moment, so I work in a GP surgery, and there we look after patients from cradle to grave, doing all kinds of different things, and the variety is lovely. But I do quite a lot of diabetes management, and so maybe at some point in the future, a kind of diabetic specialist nurse role, possibly. But actually, I really love where I work at the minute, so I'm kind of not really thinking about anything else at the moment, but that's maybe something that I'd look into.
That's really nice, especially because you found your niche as well, and I think every nurse has a niche.
Absolutely.
So obviously there's a lot of skill involved with becoming a nurse, and what do you think are the most important ones to be successful?
I think to begin with, you've got to be really sort of compassionate and have some insight into how other people feel. Communication is obviously really important. You often end up communicating either bad news, or you're giving education for somebody so that they can manage their own health. And you can't sort of talk to everybody on the same level. Everybody has different needs. So being adaptable for every different person is really important, and kind of appreciating their differences, and being able to kind of build up a rapport with people so that you can work together is really important. And obviously, sort of hard work, really, because it is hard work, even though it's really enjoyable, and sort of attention to detail, because actually if you make a mistake, it could be catastrophic for somebody.
Yeah, and I think you're absolutely right. You've nailed that on the head there. We're going to talk, obviously, like you said, it can be rewarding, and we'll talk about that a bit later in the stream about the aspects of that job role. In terms of hours, obviously these vary depending on what department, what hospital, or what GP you work in. What are your sorts of hours like?
So obviously, like you say, in the past, I've done sort of shifts in the hospital where it's been earlys and lates and nights. And some of the wards will do, when I was training, did sort of 5 night shifts on, 5 days off, things like that. Community nursing was kind of 8 till 8, so 8 in the morning till 8 at night. Quite lucky in GP practice. I kind of arrive at work about 7:45. I generally finish at 5:30, but it's a little bit flexible finish times where I work in nursing, because somebody walks through the door and it's supposed to be a half an hour appointment, but actually they need an hour of your time. That's what they need, and that's what they're going to get. So quite often you finish a little bit late, but GP practice is nice because it's generally more planned. So I generally get lunch breaks and tea breaks, and most of the time finish on time. But you just never know what's going to walk through the door, and somebody could be coming in to see you for something really simple, for a 10-minute appointment, and actually they can be really unwell. You might need to call the ambulance and wait with them, and sometimes that can be 2 hours. So there's always something of the unexpected with the hours.
And definitely, so all of you watching this, don't you ever moan about the GPs falling behind, because you never know what's going on behind closed doors. So I think as well, it's really interesting to hear about different jobs. I think a lot of people think they know what nurses do, and it's easy to make a lot of assumptions. But what's something about your job role that might surprise people?
I suppose there's two things really with GP practice. The first is like I said before, about looking after people from the cradle to the grave. I will see a lady when they're pregnant and give them vaccinations that they need during pregnancy. When she's had the baby, I do the postnatal 6-week check for the mother. When the baby's 8 weeks old, I give them their immunisations, and they come back at 12 weeks, 16 weeks, 1 year old, 3 years old. So, and then kind of everything in between. So cervical screening and health promotion, and if somebody becomes sick and they need illness management. So really, we look after the whole family, but it's really nice in GP practice because, you see the grandparents for, they'll be coming in for a chronic disease review, like they've got diabetes and they need things checking, and the week before you've been giving their grandchildren their immunisations, and it's a real, just looking after everybody at every stage, and you get to know those people, and the mums know you, and they're bringing their babies in when they're 1, and you sort of saying, oh, they've grown so much and look how tall they're getting. And so that's kind of really nice in GP practice. And I think the other thing is the complexity of the patients that we look after. So for example, a big part of my role is the diabetes management, and that's everything from diagnosing the patient with diabetes, educating them on what diabetes is and how they can manage it, and looking at what medications they need. And when the oral medications aren't working anymore, it's looking at starting them on insulin and all the education around that. So it's quite complex, and we sort of do everything from, regular scheduled immunisations through to cancer injections, dressings, ECGs, all kinds of things, and really look after. So a lot of nurses that work on a ward will just be on a respiratory ward and be very specialised in that. GP practice, we look after everybody with everything, so you have to have a really broad knowledge of lots of different kind of illnesses. And I think I would guess probably most people don't really realise that about GP practice.
I think it's those who, I'm quite clued up on GPs and hospitals and everything through personal experience, but I think a lot of people do assume that it is just basically very standard stuff, but it's not. Like you said, it can turn in one moment from being something so simple like a blood test to having to ring an ambulance for that patient itself. It's a day that you can't really predict what you do, but you have to be prepared for all sorts of encounters. And with that, I think you've touched on it quite briefly, but what do you feel is the most rewarding aspect of that job?
I think sometimes people will come to see you at their lowest moments, and really sometimes just by how you talk to somebody can just make a massive difference, not just to that day, but for the rest of their lives. So just to give an example, this week we do cervical screening as practice nurses. So that's doing the smear tests for ladies to make sure they haven't got cervical cancer. And I had a lady come to see me who was extremely anxious because she'd suffered a sexual assault in the past and was absolutely terrified to come and have a smear. And it took quite a lot of reassurance and, like I was saying, about communication, talking to her in a way that she understood, talking her through the process, letting her know she was supported and we could stop at any time. And actually, she managed to have her first smear at the age of 30 because we'd given her that extra time and support. And also because it's the first time she told anybody, we'd managed to get her some counselling for sexual assault. And for her, she was absolutely over the moon that she'd been able to come and have that cervical screening for the first time, because she'd wanted to in the past but been too afraid. But also going forward, she's now going to get some support and counselling. And for her, just in that 20-30 minute appointment, that was life-changing. And just from something as simple as coming and having your smear test, all of that, you're never just doing that one task. It's about looking after the whole person. And, you know, when she left, she was in tears. She was so relieved and so grateful and looking forward to getting some support and feeling a bit better about things that had happened in the past to her.
That's amazing. That it actually really warms me to hear that is, because I think with everything that's going off right now around women's safety in the public, it must have raised a lot more anxiety with her right now, more than ever. You're hearing about it more and you've experienced it and not been able to open up. And I'm so pleased that she's now getting that help. So that is truly an amazing, rewarding aspect of your role. And I just want to touch briefly on what is the situation right now with, have your views changed on being a nurse now you've worked through a pandemic? You know, no one signs up for this, not a nurse, not a standard human being. But what is your views now?
Yeah, I mean, I suppose I was always proud of nurses and nurses across the board, you know, from community nurses, hospital nurses, nurses working in GP practice. I think we all go above and beyond every single day. But at the minute, obviously, that's just times 100. So obviously the ward nurses and ITU nurses are really sort of taking the brunt of most of the hard work. And pulling together. But nurses everywhere, we know we've got community nurses going into patients that need care and they're COVID positive and they're just sticking on their PPE and going for it, even though sometimes, you know, you're a bit frightened inside because, you know, you're worried about yourself, but also your family, because you obviously, if you bring corona home to your family, that's a big worry. And obviously I've been involved, the practice nurses have been quite heavily involved in giving the coronavirus vaccines. So we've all been pulling in a lot of extra hours, but it's lovely because you turn up at the hub to give vaccinations and there's retired GPs, there's pharmacists, healthcare assistants, marshals that are general public volunteers and nurses, and everybody is just pulling together and getting on with it, which is really nice.
It's lovely, and it's a completely different experience to what you hear in the media as well. I took my husband for his a few weeks ago, and I was sitting in the car because I've already had mine, and I was nearly in tears seeing how many people were just turning up, masking up, making sure that they're doing their part to help you guys, because that in sense we need to help the NHS in order to relieve the pressure on you guys as well. And I just want to say to everyone watching that, you know, Nicole has put in a lot of extra hours, and I'm really grateful that she's been able to do this live stream today, because I know you've been such a busy body trying to support obviously getting everyone vaccinated. I just wanted to finish off today, Nicole, with, if you do have any advice for those who want to become a nurse. You know, we have a lot of people who watch this might be looking for a career change, or someone very young, 15, or even a 5-year-old who wants to become a nurse. What do you have to give, what advice do you have to give them?
I think explore all of the options, because there is a lot of routes into nursing. So you know, and don't worry about going to uni, because I went as a mature student with 2 little ones at home. I hadn't been to school for a long time, so I think don't worry about that. Don't let it put you off. You will be well supported. And like I say, explore all the options, because there's NVQ, obviously the access course at Leicester College. There's nurse associate training and apprenticeship routes coming up as well through universities. So if you think you're not going to be able to manage one route, there'll be another way in. A lot of places will ask for some kind of experience in healthcare, So volunteering is a really good way in as well if you're able to. I started when I very first started in healthcare, just casually working at quite a large day centre for adults with learning disabilities. So just when they needed somebody to fill in to do literally anything, even sometimes just riding on the bus with people to the day centre. And I just built those hours up, and that's how I got some experience in healthcare that allowed me to apply for the job that I eventually got. So yeah, don't be put off by the study that you need to do, because you will be well supported.
That's fantastic. And like you said, there's a lot of volunteering experiences out there. We've got Rainbows and Lauros as hospices. There's lots of charities out there that need help with, like you said, taking people on the bus to go do probably their shopping or something like that. If you are wondering about experiences, work experience, how to obtain it, CVs, routes into nursing, then you can contact our career service. They are working remotely from home right now, but they will have an appointment available for you to chat some more. I'm just going to finish off, like you mentioned, Nicole, about the access courses. Yes, we have them available at Leicester College. We have one specifically into healthcare professions. So please do look that up. You can contact us for more information about that. And I just want to briefly touch on about our T levels. So we are introducing some new qualifications. These are for those who are under 19, and T levels are a new qualification, technical base, where you get both a qualification and work experience in a specialised field. We are offering them in healthcare, so we'll do specialisms in midwifery, adult mental health nursing, and also laboratory technicians, which will be like a lot of research. Do check them out online. All the information is there. It's never too late to apply either, so do please go to our website, make your application, and get in touch. Thank you, Nicole, for joining us today. I really do appreciate you take the time, and thank you for being such a fantastic key worker in the last year, regardless of pandemic. You guys are much appreciated.
Thank you.
Thank you. You're welcome. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for tuning in.